back here. Good to see you all. And we've got Steve, as always. How you doing, Steve, the cricket guy?
Evening, Matt. Yeah, good to be here. Glad to be here. And after 4 days Test cricket, it's lovely to be on the Cricket Fan Show.
Good, good. And we've got Tony the Legend. You're here,
Hi,
as always.
Hey,
Thank you
gentlemen.
very much.
Good to see
Good
you.
to see you as well.
And a couple of sunny cricket days just to cheer us all up.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we're firmly, anyone watching, we're firmly in the summer sun in the UK. It's actually due to rain tomorrow, but apart from that, it's been glorious this week, and it's going to be glorious next week, apart from tomorrow. And it's been beautiful. It's hot and sweaty. There's lots of people playing cricket. It's the cricket season. And there's England versus New Zealand at the moment. And look, it started off very entertaining, and it became even more of a situation that everybody transfixed on with Ollie Robinson. So the boys are going to talk about that and the game. So over to you, Steve. And Tony, carry on.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you very much. Yeah, so Tony, obviously got loads to talk about from the 2 full days of cricket that we've had. But first things first, probably ought to touch on the controversy surrounding Ollie Robinson. So obviously he was called into the squads for the first time. He's had a very, very good domestic season so far. You know what it's like in English cricket when these guys that have never played a test match start getting features written about them in the Telegraph and the Guardian, and they start getting reported on and mentioned. The pros in who do the journalism in the county circuit, they know who's going to get a call up, and it was no surprise when Robinson got called into the squad. And then of course he was facing competition from Overton and others to maybe be picked for the team, but then he got in the team and he started off and he had a good day, and we'll talk about that. But then during the day, it came to light about his tweets from when he was 18, 19 years old, so 7 or 8 years ago, which were not acceptable. The language in them, the attitudes that they show are not acceptable, and not and I don't, and they're certainly not acceptable in 2021. But let's face it, they weren't acceptable 7 or 8 years ago either. So it took the focus off a bowling performance, which was noteworthy for his first day in Test cricket, and put it onto something entirely different. Tony, what were your thoughts on that when the news broke about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, he was 18. Inexcusable. I don't care whether 12 or 112. Those sort of tweets are inexcusable. What can we say in mitigation? I believe his parents had divorced. He was really in the midst of, shall we say, family turmoil. And I think he was probably, I don't know for sure, but the story is that he was on a bit of a bender, and he wrote these disgusting tweets. I find a couple of things surprising about it. It's 8 or 9 years ago or whatever, and yet it didn't come to light until the day he played his first game for England. Is that coincidental? Is it somebody who's got it in for him? I'm not dismissing the tweets in any way, shape or form, and I think he will have to pay some form of punishment for that. We'll have to wait and see what the ECB decide. Secondly, the ECB themselves. He's been what shall we say, a well-known cricketer for 2 or 3 years now, and Sussex and the ECB should both have been aware of what had happened, and I feel that it is a little bit sad that they didn't do their homework sufficiently, and the lad then got obviously rightly heavily criticised and had to make an apology. Which, okay, and I do believe that he was young at 18, and I believe now that at 26, nearly 27, he is, I'm sure, a changed man. That doesn't take away from the, if you like, the crime of what he did, and the fact that he must pay some sort of punishment in the cricket realms, so that he can be seen to have, if you like, done penance for what he's done.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, certainly in all of his days on Earth, yesterday was the most high-profile day he's ever had, and the fact they came to light yesterday, I think, is not coincidental. I suppose it's quite interesting. I've seen Michael Vaughan on the BBC and others saying you'd have thought that the ECB would have done their due diligence and known how to handle that. Yeah, I do too. I suppose there's two ways of looking at that. I'm a little bit, and I'm not saying this is what Vaughan was suggesting, but some people seeming to suggest that, well, why on earth didn't he delete them? It's like, well, that's a good question, but that's not really the point for me. It's not the fact that these have been found that's the issue. The fact is that he felt it was okay to express these views and in public, and to have those sorts of statements, and to use the kind of language that he has. And I'm not going to repeat the language on this live stream or this podcast today, because I don't think there's any place for it. But really, for me, it's that it should have been found by the ECB. They should have been aware of it, so that they could have made sure that he was given direction and put on a path, and made sure he was on a path to take it seriously.
It's always better to, if you like, own up before it's found, and that creates a better image, if you like. The deletion point, he probably just hoped that time had made them go away. That's a little bit naive, because there are people who store these things up ready to use at the appropriate moment. And those people who had it in for him decided that this was the appropriate moment. However, as a person, I think he showed today great personal backbone, in that he came back today and he bowled well. He got wickets. In fact, only for Broad dropping what was next door to a dolly catch, he would have got a fifer and been up on the honours board at Lord's, which would have perhaps created even more of a furore. So maybe it was just as well that Broad dropped the catch. But it did show, I think, that he is a new man. He is resilient, and he stood up and was counted when.
On a difficult day. Yeah, I must admit, I wondered if he would take the field this morning. I wondered if he would be fit to play, or if the England camp felt he would be able to play, which obviously would have had a big knock-on effect. Got lots of folk watching this evening. Really, really keen for anyone watching live to give us your views about that. Were you surprised when you saw Robinson come out and continue playing today? Did you think he should have done or shouldn't have done? I think in the context of a game where he's been selected, it's very difficult for the other 21 players playing to have taken a player out. It could have disrupted the game in a way. It's not like these were tweets he sent last week. These were old. So I think it was okay that he continued to play, as long as he was able to, and his performance today suggests he did. Diego's very kindly sent us a message there, but unfortunately I don't speak Spanish, Diego, so I'm afraid I don't know. You're asking us a question about our notifications on YouTube, and do we notify? I think, if I can decipher that, if you're asking if we're live on YouTube, we do normally. Mac looks after all of those sorts of things, and I think normally makes people know we're live on YouTube. But sorry if I've misinterpreted your question.
And certainly you can get us on YouTube after this.
And Amrishar is asking us if we're covering the ICC World Test Championships. We certainly are. We're really looking forward to the game that's coming up between India and New Zealand, very much so, and we'll be talking about that. And in fact, I've written a series of articles reviewing the top 4 teams who finished at the top of the World Test Championship table: England, New Zealand, Australia, and India, in some depth, looking at some stats, looking at some ones that perhaps you might not have looked at before, first innings performances, and so on and so forth. These are all available on Medium, and before the end of the show, Amrishar, we will be putting up and mentioning those. And certainly, if you look at the at my Twitter feed, the @SFTV_cricket, there's plenty of links to them. I posted them all up yesterday.
And as a small sideline, it'll be very interesting that the World Test Championship, because New Zealand will be, I would consider, finely honed for that match. whereas India will almost be coming into it stone cold. So
They
it'll
will.
be very, very interesting to see the outcome of it, because at the moment, I think everybody would view India as the likely favourites.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, the preparation that New Zealand are going to have with these two tests, I think, is going to benefit them enormously.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Amish's saying he thinks Indians will be flocking to this Twitch channel soon. Well, let's hope so, Amish. We're looking forward to. We really like Indian cricket. I've also written lots of a long article on the IPL as well, which although it got curtailed, you might find interesting. So tell your friends about this Twitch channel, and that we're on YouTube as well. And also I think Mac puts us on Facebook, and afterwards when we're not live, you can also get us on all your podcasting platforms as well as a podcast after the fact as well. So plenty of ways, but we love it when you're on with us live because it's great to get your comments. So Tony, let's turn to the game itself. And because I think the first thing to talk about from my perspective was the England selections. I was really surprised when I saw the team. Well, how about you?
Well, as you know, last week I said I fancied England to win. That was before they picked the team that they picked. Now, it could still be proven wrong, but I think that the number of left-handers that New Zealand have got, and the way the wicket is looking to be going because of the dry spell we've had, I think we will regret not having a spinner, even if it was what would be an off spinner to the left-handers. I think that the fact that Joe Root had to bowl over 12 overs in the first day tells you all about what the selection was like. I've heard a lot of people say, well, if you pick Jack Leach, for example, who would you leave out of the 4 bowlers? I wouldn't have left out one of them. I'd have left out one of the batsmen. You've got to, I've often said this, that it's time that batsmen took responsibility. And with Bracey, who is an opening or a number 3 bat at the worst, coming in what would be at 6, I think then you would have you'd have Robinson at 7. I think it would be up to the top 6 batsmen to score enough runs. If you looked at what New Zealand did in the first 2 days, they have scored enough runs, probably not to lose the match, but it was down to one man who scored 200 on debut and before being run out. God knows how many records he's broken and equaled. It was unbelievable. What I was impressed about was he didn't make a single mistake. I didn't see him give a chance. I didn't hear of him in the times I wasn't watching give a chance. And the fact that England had 4 bowlers, pace bowlers, and no spinners of renown. I mean, okay, Joe is a handy occasional wicket breaker, despite the 4 for 8 that he took at one time in India or whatever it was. I think our attack was too samey.
I agree, Tony. That's exactly what I tweeted, actually, that I thought it looked a bit samey. Yeah, I agree with you about Root. I think Root is actually a better spinner than an occasional spinner. I understand why he bowls himself on occasion rather than as a frontline spinner. I don't think he's probably quite good enough to be a frontline spinner, but he's certainly better than a declaration bowler as well. But when I saw the lineup, I thought, yeah, I mean, you know, Anderson, Broad, and Robinson are all fairly similar. Wood's a little different, of course, because he's shorter and he's quicker. He bowled very quickly on the first day, I think. But I was worried with that attack with Anderson and Broad are both obviously older, and their workload is being managed by Root. You can see he doesn't generally bowl them for long spells. Now I think Robinson can be a bit of a workhorse, but Wood, you have to be very careful with his load, particularly across a whole Test match. And I did wonder if we were a bowler short. I really did, and I did wonder if, you know, maybe when they were thinking about selecting the squad, if they were really worried about getting enough batting in the side and having a spinner in, maybe this would have been a good test to try Matt Critchley from Derbyshire, the leg spinner who could probably comfortably bat at number 7.
Wickets again since the squad was announced.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, one has to say, and okay, let's hope it doesn't happen, but it's quite possible that if Root bowls what we would call too many overs, there's an outside chance that it could affect his batting. I mean, he's in there as the captain and the batsman. He's not in there to bowl too many overs. He would be like the years and years ago, Doug Walters of Australia, who they used to bring on if they were desperate for a wicket. The other thing I would talk about is Broad. Broad was wicketless. He was made vice captain, which means he's going to play in both the tests. That's to my mind. I can't see them dropping that. Now, Broad's test strike rate is a wicket every 57 balls, 8 overs or so. Question: how many overs has Broad bowled since he last took a test wicket?
Oh, that's a very good question, Tony. I go on. You're going to have to tell me.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, go on.
77.
Really?
77, and his strike rate is about 8 overs. Well, a wicket every 8 overs, and he hasn't taken a wicket in 77 overs.
Wow.
Plus the other thing, and I heard this being discussed in a more tactful manner than I'm going to put it by Michael Vaughan, and he's not the most tactful of people. When Anderson and Broad are on the team together, they are a very powerful duo, and it takes all of Root's strength as captain to, if you like, be positive and take the reins. Several times today, and I mean probably upwards nearly to 10, I saw Anderson and Broad conversing with one another as to what they would do. And I feel that we should adopt the procedure of playing one of the two of them in each test until we get to Australia. Then we have to think again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also noticed that sometimes Wood and Robinson were coming into bowl and they had Anderson and Broad at mid on and mid off, and after every ball they were kind of getting it and they were shining it and they were talking to them, and that was that. I thought, God, that might be good. But also, sometimes you just need to let these guys bowl. Robinson's got into the test side, bowling his way, doing things how he wants to do them. There was also a bit towards the end of the first day, I don't know if you noticed, when Root was gesturing to Anderson. He wanted him to come on to bowl again to the end of the day. And Anderson was kind of doing that thing where he was pretending he couldn't see him. Like, look at, he actually did the comedy, "Who, me?" at one point. It was really quite funny. It was really, really funny. So before we move away from the England selection, Amrish has asked us the question, asked if we think that England have become too Root heavy. And noting that he carried England through Sri Lanka and the win in Chennai, and Amrish is making the point, if he doesn't score, England don't do well. I think that's a really interesting point, Amrish. What I would say is one of my article about England that's on Medium really looks at the problems that England's top three have had, and I think I would probably categorise it. I don't know if England are too Root heavy. He's doing his thing. But they are definitely top three light. I think Burns, and we're jumping around a bit, but Burns batted very well today, and I think is looking very good. But England's top three in the first knock of the game, so either in innings number 1 or innings number 2 in the first half of the game, in 2021 are averaging 18. They're not batting. How many not batting for very long either in terms of number of balls. Root is getting out to the middle very, very early in England's first innings, in almost every test, and across the World Test Championship as well. That whole piece, the England top three only averaged 30. It's not enough runs and it's not enough time. So I would probably categorise it, Amrish, as saying I don't think England are too Root heavy. I think they're too top three light. Tony, what's your take on Amrish's question?
I agree with you totally. I took one look at Devon Conway, and the one thing that struck me throughout the whole of his innings was what I call a test innings, and he left the ball supremely well. Some a little close to the comfort, but he wasn't tempted into playing injudicious shots. Crawley got out today to an injudicious shot. He did the same thing when he was in India. If you're going to build a test innings, you've got to get in before you start playing that sort of shot. Even Burns tonight, in the last but one over, Southey bowled a ball outside the off stump, and Byrne went for a flashy off drive and completely missed the ball. And that was the penultimate over when he was playing for tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
They have got to learn to build an innings. Sibley has it within him to build a innings, but I feel a bit sorry for him. I wouldn't have picked him for this test, mainly because with his broken finger, he had hardly had any cricket. And it's just the same as in football. You can play all you like in the nets, but it's match practice that counts. And to see the ball seaming around or whatever out on the pitch. And Sibley had, I think, had a couple of innings before he was picked in the squad. And that's, frankly, to me, not enough. And I felt, okay, he got quite a good ball, but he did play across it a bit. But nevertheless, I just feel he has the temperament to build an innings, but as yet he needs more match practice.
Yeah, it was a good ball he got today. Also, he got a fairly bowler-friendly decision from the umpire. I mean, there was 2 umpires' calls in terms of where the ball hit the pad and whether it was going to go on and hit the stump. So he could count himself a little bit unlucky with that.
Yeah,
but he looked a bit scratchy. He wasn't out there very long. He was only out there for 15 minutes.
As was bound to happen. Happen. Nevertheless, as you were saying, Amrisha, are we too root heavy? I think that Steve's view is, I agree with it. Not often I agree totally with him, but I do tonight. I think we're top 3 light rather than root heavy. You can't have, Root's in the side and he is good. You might just as well say India are Kohli heavy or Australia are Steve Smith heavy or whatever. No, we need to solve the top 3. I've always been a Burns fan, but I have this feeling that he's only good for 60 or 70. It'll be interesting to see how many he gets tomorrow. But we certainly got to find some more top order batsmen who are prepared to play a test innings, not a flashy county innings, a test innings.
In those first innings across the World Test Championship I was talking about, so 69 numbers 1, 2, and 3 batted across the test matches, across the 23 tests there. Bearing in mind this is the first innings only, so when you're trying to respond either to somebody else's knock or certainly set up the game, 42% of those innings were for 0 to 9 runs, under 10 runs. 42% of the top 3 knocks in the World Test Championship were for less than 10, and only 23% of them were for 50 or more. Burns stands out, averaging 39, nearly 40, and he faces 90 balls on average. Sibley, 24, faces just under 70 balls. So he usually gets there to the crease. He doesn't normally get out quite as quickly as he did today. Crawley's averaging 51. And facing 90 balls. Of course, that was massively inflated. It's a pretty small sample with his 267 against Pakistan. When you take that out, which arguably is unfair, but if you take it out, then actually he's averaging 27, and he's facing less than 60 balls. So, that's just not enough time overall across the World Test Championship. The top 3 individually are averaging 70 balls each, 73 balls each. So you're going to get Root out. He's going to be out batting, within the first 20 odd overs, then, that's particularly actually if it's the first day of a test match, probably bringing the poor bloke out just before lunch every time, if the way that they're going with not that many on the board. So pretty difficult for England. So let's finish talking about the England innings as that was today, just to round that off before going back to talk a bit about how New Zealand did. So certainly for England's innings with a bat, I thought Burns looked quite good. He was a little bit scratchy when he first went out, but he settled down and he played pretty well. He seemed to know where his off stump was today. We've spoken about Sibley getting a slightly unlucky decision, but not a great bit of footwork to get himself in a bit of a tangle. Crawley had an absolute brain melt with a big booming drive to Southey, which was he was being set up for it. He was being set up for it as well, and it was just a 3-card trick from a swing bowler. And just cramp him, give him a bit of space, but move it the other way. I mean, it was you could see it coming. I mean, he might as well have handed him a card and told him what he was going to do with it, and he still would have fallen for it. So not good. And then Root, I thought batted well and batted quite within himself, but with Root that he can go through the gears as the game demands. The Kiwi bowling today was also interesting. Sorry, Tony, did you want to say something about
I just want to say about a final thing about Joe Root before we move on. Joe Root has scored those runs despite the fact that England have failed in the top 3. I think the average in the last 10 tests, England have been 25 for 2 on average when Root has come to the wicket. Amazing stat.
Yeah.
Now, just think if he came to the wicket when he hadn't got that pressure on him and was able to settle in and play, he could have scored even more runs than he's scoring now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he is, for that reason, he's probably even now an underrated batsman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think he if he was able to come in, 150 for 2 rather than then he would be in a much stronger place with a bowling attack with an older ball, which is very important in many conditions, not least in England. But he's coming in and the ball's still fairly new. And there's not a lot of runs on the board, and it's not a good situation with the bowling. I thought it was interesting that with no Bolt in the side, that Jameson was given the new ball, and I thought he bowled okay. I thought his first spell he looked a little bit like he was looking to, I don't know, do something a bit magic and try to create a moment of magic rather than just have a ball to a plan. He was a bit both sides of the wickets. Southey was terrific in whenever he bowled and just looked like he had it on a piece of string. I thought actually that the Kiwi bowlers got a bit more out of the new ball than the England bowlers did, which was interesting. And then Colin de Grandhomme came on and bowled, and with his Billy Ray Cyrus locks and his sort of big beefy guy coming trundling in.
Wobblers, yes.
Yeah, looks my word. The counties have made an error in not bringing the Grandhomme over for the last 10 years, haven't they? He would have taken a hatful of wickets at that pace in county cricket.
He would have moved the ball sideways in some of the English.
He would. And then,
thank goodness, from our point of view, that Trent Boult has only just arrived in the country today or tomorrow. I think one of the two. If he'd have been there, I think we really might have been up against it.
Yeah.
For bowling point of view, and I go back now then to talk a little bit about Devon Conway.
Yep.
And from the English point of view, I was listening to Jeremy Coney, the one-time New Zealand captain, and he made to me a very good point. He said the only bowler who troubled Conway was Mark Wood. He hit Conway twice, and he made him feel uncomfortable quite a bit with the short ball. And when we opened up this morning, Root opened with, and of course they're 2 great bowlers, probably still good bowlers, very good bowlers. He opened with Anderson and Broad, and Jeremy Coney said, to me, you open with the bowler who is performing well. If you've got all pace bowlers, it doesn't really matter who opens unless one is particularly better with the new ball rather than with the older ball as it gets older. He could not understand why Wood didn't open this morning, and I share that opinion. I think that raw pace and the wicket was quicker than it was yesterday. I mean, yesterday Wood was pounding in, but he was only getting the ball just above waist high when he was bowling the short stuff. But today the pitch was much quicker, and I think that they should have opened with Wood to put a bit more pressure on Conway. I'm not saying that he would have got him out, but he would have maybe put some more pressure on him.
Well, if you're the captain and you're asking yourself, who is it that the guy that's coming in with a big score overnight doesn't want to face? That's how you should be approaching that. Yeah, but again, I go back to whether or not it's dressing room culture and Anderson and Broad are the senior guys and such senior guys that they get given the ball whenever they want it, or if it's a question of, well, look, you get most out of them when they've had a good night's rest. And that's when they're at their quickest, and their early spells in the day is when you're going to get most out of them. So maybe there's an element of culture and maybe an element of workload management, and not saving them until they've been in the field for an hour, and then you're losing the best hour from them in the day. I don't know, but let's turn to the New Zealand card. So obviously, Conway was the star of the show, almost the first man, I think, to carry his bat for 200 in his maiden test innings, which would have been lovely. And he was he was out by millimeters as well when he was run out as last man. Batted for 578 minutes for around 200, and again, amusingly, given that he was pretty much chanceless, got to 200 with a fluky top edge 6, which was pretty out of character for him. But yeah, I like you, Tony. When I was watching about you, sometimes you watch somebody bat, and you can see that they're a walking wicket. They look like they're not in control. It looks like the bowler is controlling the game. When I was watching Conway bat yesterday and today, he looked like he was in control.
Oh, totally.
He knew where his off stump was.
Totally.
He knew what his limitations were with his stroke play, and he played. It's like Alistair Cook built a career out of knowing that he had 3 good shots.
Yes.
You know, and I mean, certainly until he got to 60 or 70. And I didn't mean that in a disparaging way to Alistair Cook, but apart from his very, very solid defence, he ran it down to third man, and he flicked it off his hip, or he pulled it. If the situation maybe a square cut, that and he didn't play in the areas he didn't want to play. And to me, Conway was doing this very much the same sort of thing, and was playing where he wanted to play. He was leaving the ball very well, and looked untroubled. Untroubled.
I agree. What I call a test match innings. And interestingly, Nichols also played very well, I have to say. But once he'd gone, we were on top. And in fact, when Broad dropped the catch off Robinson, they were 328 for 8 at that time. So that would have been 328 for 9. And really, we would have hoped to. Of course, Wagner came in and played an extraordinary innings, some absolutely superb shots. Should have promoted into number 7 immediately. But having said all that, we might have dismissed them for considerably under 350, or hoped to. Instead of that, they got 378, and that 50 runs extra for effectively the last 2 wickets, or last wicket, really, in reality, if you take out the drop catch. That could make an awful lot of difference.
No, I agree. No, Wagner, I keep calling him Wagner. My classical music education coming through. Wagner did very well with the bat today, and just he did. But I mean, when you come in with a decent score on the board, and you're deep into the second day of a test match, and why not as number 11? Your batsmen have given you the platform just to have a bit of a thrash, and he played, and he wasn't a slog. He played some lovely strokes as well. It was very good. But England did well to fight back today, and Robinson and Wood particularly did bowl very well, and Bracey got his first dismissal. In fact, Bracey was very unlucky not to have an absolutely wonderful first dismissal as a very sharp stumping off of route yesterday, which would have been a brilliant first test victim for him behind the stumps. It was a wonderful bit of glove work. He was just I think it might have been Nichols. I think he was just in when he had his back foot just back. But no, so Bracey did okay. I thought. I mean, he got a little bit of criticism I saw from some ex-pros on Twitter.
I would disagree with you. I thought that to keep wicket to 4 pace bowlers is not the most difficult thing in the world, especially when they're reasonably accurate. The ball swung a little bit, particularly when it got past the wicket. I would describe his performance as scruffy. He mishandled quite a few, and it's very difficult for a new wicketkeeper. I didn't realise until I heard Richard Pryor being interviewed, the importance of a mature wicketkeeper in a test team. It is amazing the help he should give to the skipper, and particularly this was a point made today by Agnew on Test Match Special. The DRS system does not exist in county cricket. So when you come in as a wicketkeeper, and it is up to you to give leading advice to the skipper as to whether you think a particular decision, usually LBWs, should be appealed, then you are asking somebody who is completely inexperienced in the DRS system to take those or give that advice. And I don't think that Butler is in any danger of losing his place. Let me put it that way.
No, and I guess there's an argument that says, well, he didn't let anybody down behind the stumps. You might say he was a bit scruffy, but he is probably England's fourth choice wicketkeeper.
Oh,
so
yes. He was adequate. Yes.
Yeah. He didn't let anybody down. And also, I think Lords is a notoriously difficult place to keep if you're not used to it, because of the slope and because of the way the ball fades down the slope or away from you a bit sometimes, and can be very difficult to keep there. So maybe they should have just pick John Simpson for a one-off test, maybe, but that would have been what I'd have done, perhaps. But no, I'd be interested to see when Bracey bats, of course, because as you say, he bats in the top three for Gloucestershire, and it will be interesting to see what he brings with the bat, and that may be where we see a point of difference from him with some of the others. But of course, Butler and Folkes and Bairstow can all bat as well, so it's kind of par for the course these days.
We're very, very well off for wicketkeeper batsmen, and there was a lot of emphasis today on the fact that Stokes wasn't playing, Wokes wasn't available, Moen, if you wanted an all-rounder spinner, he wasn't available. But a wicket-keeper batsman is in effect an all-rounder, and he will bat today at 7. But I personally thinking he was a number. We're going back, repeating what we said earlier in the show. But I would have left out one of the batsmen and played him and batting at 6. That's The other thing about the bowling, I was looking up about Wood, who I thought bowled very well today. His average, in the UK is 45, and his average overseas is 23. It's a staggering difference. So he's obviously going to perform better in Australia because, let's face it, and if we have a hot summer against India, he'll be performing better again, I think.
Yeah, I think the problem for Wood and looking at those numbers, and as you know, I love a number in cricket, but I think Wood very often has been left out in England in favour of people that swing and seam the ball more. And then of course Archer came along and took if we want to play, if we've got room for one very fast, very sort of quick enforcer, then Archer's a better bowler. So I think poor old Mark Wood has often not played on the seamer-friendly conditions in England as much.
He did suffer a few injuries as well, of course. But nevertheless, in matches that he's played, he only averages 45.
True.
He needs fast wickets, and hopefully this summer he will get fast wickets. We'll be able to test out the Indian batsmen against him, because there's no doubt. And he's what, 6-7 miles an hour faster than any of the other bowlers in the team today. Robinson bowled very well, but again, he reminded me a little bit of Hendrick. Do you remember Mike Hendrick? A tall, big guy who can move the ball and is very accurate. He bowls a lot slower than I expected him to bowl. 80 mile an hour is virtually his top speed, and I thought he was a faster bowler than that. But nevertheless, that's not to take away from his performance, because I thought he was good, he was accurate, and he bowled with his head as well, because the catch, which was an excellent catch by Crawley, was, I think, a bit of a thought-out cricket. He bowled a short one, and he went for the hook and was caught. But, I don't know. I still think at the end of the day, I could be wrong, but I still think we will rue not picking Jack Lynch in this match. In this match.
I think I agree. I think the lack of a frontline spin option is probably a mistake. The thing about Robinson, in terms of who he reminds people of, and I agree, lots of people said this was Hazelwood, the Australian bowler.
The Australian,
though I mean, in terms of how he approaches the crease, his build, his kind of action. Unfortunately, Robinson appears to be about 10 miles an hour slower than Hazelwood.
That is the thing. I was thinking ahead again to Australia. And provided they don't consider that his punishment is not being paid for the tweets, I wonder, will he actually go to Australia, or would he suffer because of, say, Stone, Archer, Wood, Broad and Anderson, and would Robinson get in? And maybe he'll get it if he gets enough. If he plays against India during the summer and gets enough wickets, he'll force his way in. But we'll wait and see.
Well, I suppose it'd be quite interesting to see him bowl on somewhere like Perth, with his height, to see what he could get out of the pitch there. He'd probably be quite a handful on a bouncy wicket like Perth. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see how he goes. So, anyway, folks that are watching and listening in this evening, now, what did you think of Robinson as a bowler, setting aside the off-field stuff? Did you think he looked like a Test player? Did you think he turned his arm over like a test match bowler, or were you like us, perhaps a bit surprised that his pace was perhaps a little bit lower, and he was a bit more Anderson Broad paced than he was Wood paced? Let's put it that way. Tell us what you think if you'd like to, and indeed about how England bowled in general. But before we leave the Test match, Tony, thinking about the New Zealand batting card, you're right. We did get into them a bit once we got Nichols out. I thought Nichols was one of those where it was a kind of Jonathan Trott type innings. There wasn't a lot. There weren't too many moments in it that you would tell your grandchildren about, in terms of of his wonderful stroke play and but he was very, very composed. Knew, again, like Conway, knew what he was doing. Knew his game, chipped away, accumulated runs, didn't worry about aggressively taking the fight. Just knew this is the first innings of the game. We just need to accumulate runs, and we've got plenty of time. We've got all the time in the world. And I thought he was very good. They probably wouldn't buy a best of Henry Nichols batting DVD. It wouldn't be one to. It wouldn't be one to.
That's very cruel. He's got 2,150 before this series. 2,152 runs at an average of 43.92, and he scored 7 tons and 10 50s.
Yeah, I'm joshing slightly, Tony.
Yeah,
I thought it was I enjoyed watching him bat. Really, he was good.
I think he's a mainstay in the middle order. There's going to be no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Some of the others down below, whilst on paper they're good. For instance, Jemison's average was very, very, very good. 40 something, I think. But
55, I think.
55, was it? Well, even so. Well, but the point was made on today that he's only actually, I think, had 7 innings.
Yeah.
And it means that New Zealand have stacked up a stack of runs in their first innings. And so he has been coming in and has ended up not out, and has coming in on the back of a lot of runs being scored, and because he's a very positive player. You could tell that by his attitude to his batting.
Yeah.
So,
and I think increasingly he's playing T20 cricket as well, so I'm sure he can hit it a long way if it's in his arc, and that's the kind of game that you want him to play. So I guess for me, looking at the New Zealand lineup and how they played, the 2 positions of real interest, and if anyone wants to look at my articles on Medium, you'll see I wrote about this. One was Latham was a nailed on opening batsman, but they'd struggled to find somebody to play with him well. I think Conway's probably secured his place, certainly through to the World Test Championship final with that knock. And again, he looked every inch a Test top order batsman. So that's kind of job done for the New Zealand selectors. The other was Mitchell Santner coming in as a spinner. Now, Santner's strike rate across the World Test Championships was horrific. I mean, it's something like a wicket every 171 balls.
Yeah.
It was interesting to watch him bowl today. He didn't bowl very much; he only bowled 2 or 3 overs. But I was watching with real interest to see how he got on, and he didn't present like a flat arrows chucking, seal up an end kind of guy. He looked like he was bowling with a little bit of loop and looking to get it to turn and to drag the batsman onto the front foot. So I was quite surprised.
He got one to turn out of the rough to Burns that beat a lot of them. He beat Burns and the keeper and went away down for byes. Which just shows you, again, we have to come back to Leach again, don't we? And perhaps the surprise that he wasn't picked. I've got to give you, bearing in mind what Conway did today, I'm going to give you a little test team.
Go on.
Keaton Jennings, Roy, Colin Munro of New Zealand, Marcus Labuschagne, Conway, Glenn Phillips, BJ Watling, Tom Curran, Simon Harmer, Michael Nesser, and Neil Wagner. Can you get the connection? Anybody out there? Anybody got any ideas of the
Oh,
connection?
no, I don't know the connection, Tony. We'll come
Well,
back to that at the end. If anyone's
connection is they were all born in South Africa and
right.
played for other countries.
Mm,
And but I mean, you've got
right.
two in the New Zealand team today, Wagner and Conway.
Mm,
You've got Labuschagne, who's scoring bags of runs for Australia. And you've got
yeah.
BJ Watling, who was playing today. He was also, so they've got three in the team today, born in South Africa. And Michael Nessa took some wickets today
Yep.
in the county championships, and he was born in South Africa.
Mhm.
It's quite astounding how many people. Okay, some of them have left. I'm to make a point. I'm cheating a little bit because some of them left at the age of 10. You know, Roy left
Yeah.
at a very young age, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, they were all
Mhm.
born in South Africa and had the right to play for South Africa.
Mhm.
But that's just a little humorous aside for you.
Very good, Tony. No, I should have thought through that. My brain froze when you were
That's
suggesting
all right.
a test team with Keaton
I
Jennings
thought,
opening. I started
yeah,
to panic.
I thought I was very mean on you, not preparing you for the
No,
caller question.
that's all right, Tony. I will.
Jumped on you.
I will return the favour one day with a cricket
Yeah.
trivia question and see if I can sneak one past you. But yeah, no. So I have to say, looking at the New Zealand team last week when we were saying who we thought would win the test, I said I thought New Zealand would just have the edge, and you thought England would probably just use home advantage in their favour. I have to say I look at that team, the New Zealand team, and think it's got a very well balanced batting lineup. It's got genuine all-rounders, as you say, and Watling is a very good batsman who can keep wicket. De Grantham, Jameson, Santner can all bat very well, and Southey and Wagner showed today they were no mugs either. You add Bolt to that, and maybe Bolt comes in for De Grantham. Maybe you play.
I might have gone for New Zealand had Bolt been playing.
Yeah,
but of course I didn't know they wouldn't pick Leach. In my own defence, he said,
yes,
desperately.
of course.
I have to say, I can't see England winning it from here, whether or not, because let's face it, it has been ponderous, shall we say. And we lost 4 overs yesterday and 8 overs today. So the slow over rate is also coming into the occasion, into the equation. So I don't know how you solve that problem, but if the pitch doesn't deteriorate, I don't know that New Zealand bowling attack will, weak as England can be, I don't know that it will bowl England out cheaply twice. It'll bowl them out twice, but I don't know cheaply. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think they possibly, England batting fourth. Any test match batting fourth is tricky. Depends how much time. I mean, tomorrow is as the third day of a test often is a crucial day, isn't it? If England go in at lunch at 175 for 2 or 175 for 3, then England are probably in a good position to draw the game unless they can whittle New Zealand out for very few when they bat a second time around. If England go into lunch and they're more, and there's a few more wickets down and the runs then don't really matter whether they're 160, 170, 180 or even 200. If they've got 5 or 6 or 7 down by that point, then they're going to be a long way behind. New Zealand will bat again and can bat quite aggressively if they wish to try to give themselves a maximum amount of time to bowl England out. So I think the next session of the test, actually, the one which will be on Friday morning, is a very, very crucial session for the test match.
The other thing to remember is we got away with it. We got Kane Williamson out cheaply.
Yeah.
And maybe we wouldn't get him out so cheaply in the second innings. We just have to see.
Yeah, I think from memory, I have him averaging something like 77 across the World Test Championship. So yeah, he's a wonderful player.
But his average in England isn't startling.
No, it's a small sample though. It's a small sample, I think. But I mean, again, what we probably don't want is one of the big 4 batsmen with something to prove. That's probably the last thing the England bowling attack needs. Is that. And again, I'd be very interested to see how an attack with both Anderson and Broad in it gets on, having bowled 122 overs in the first innings. If they don't get much of a rest, if England don't bat well tomorrow and they're bowling again, say by tea or just after tea or something like that, wouldn't have had even a day's, well, would have had roughly a day's rest in the middle of the game. How many overs can you get out of Anderson and Broad off the reel? What sort of pressure does that then put on Robinson and particularly Wood? That's when Leach, the absence of Leach, might be most keenly felt. If you can't use a frontline spinner to bowl for the best part of a session at one end and allow your fast bowlers to rotate at the other. Lots of interest to come in the next couple of days. I think the Friday will be they often call it moving day, don't they? I think in the test match, it's where it moves towards what kind of results will be available. But England are going to have to bat well. They could get to close to parity. Then it becomes a third and fourth innings shootout. And maybe Wood and Anderson and Broad turn it on if the pitch deteriorates, or maybe the overhead conditions become a little bit more favourable and get a bit more movement. But I think at this point, I don't know about you, I probably make New Zealand favourites to win, if not a draw, 50-50 between a draw and New Zealand.
I'll put it this way: I can't see England winning unless they have an extraordinary performance up until tea time tomorrow.
Yeah.
Other than that, I cannot see England winning. Their best hope would be to draw the match.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's probably where we are. But it's been fascinating so far. As ever with Test cricket, there's all so many subplots and options and variables and games within games and matchups and all sorts of things. It's always fascinating thinking about the complexity of a Test match. Brilliant stuff. So we've still got a couple of minutes. If there's any other comments from anyone who's watching and wanting to give us your thoughts on how you think the Test match is going to go. Have you been impressed with New Zealand so far? Have you been impressed with England? I think so far I'd be giving New Zealand probably an 8 out of 10 so far, Tony, for the Test. I think England so far possibly a 6.
And I want to say one thing about the wicket. It is what I would call a genuine Test match wicket. Mm-hmm. It is good to bat on, the side winning the toss and batting. You don't have any hesitation in the choice of that sort of thing. I don't like a situation where if you win the toss, you're automatically going to bung the opposition in and hope to roll them out cheaply. I would come back to just one final thing about the slow over rates. Bumble or David Lloyd was giving out stink about this, and he nearly went. They've been on the field 35 minutes this morning when Conway called for a drink, and on came an array of people with towels and everything, and they'd been out 35 minutes. He nearly went cracked, but he produced the stat that in the 1950s. There were 24 overs bowled in a day. Now, okay, it was open, not covered wickets. In the 70s, it was down to 17 overs in a day, and now it's down to 12 plus overs in a day, and that is a really staggering reduction from it's almost halved in 40 years. You know.
I mean, I think that's in some way to do with fewer spinners. And spinners, when they bowl, tend to bowl later in games.
And covered wickets have produced the fact that spinners don't have the effect that they don't
Exactly. So I think there's some kind of other reasons for that.
If anybody out there has any thoughts on what they would do about it. I have a personal little thing about it. I would penalise the bowling side by adding at double the scoring rate. I would add, for the overs not bowled, I would double the scoring rate to the score. In other words, if you were 4 overs short in a day and the average scoring rate was 3.2, I would add the 4 overs at 7 runs and over to the score as a penalty of the opposition. That's just a thought. There may be people out there who have other ideas as to how to speed up the.
I think in England in June, I think you just play until you've done the overs. Frankly, you're
Well,
not going to struggle for life. I mean, there can be some travel and some crowd things when you've got a full crowd in that can make that more difficult, but not at Lords. I mean, at Lords, just keep playing. You're in the centre of London. There's plenty of tubes and buses. Anyone can get home.
You couldn't do that in India, for instance, Steve. When it's like drawing a curtain, it's light 1 minute and it's pitch black the next.
Yeah, that's true.
You couldn't play on like that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if anybody's got a good idea, because I do feel the bowling side should be punished. I mean, we had four seamers, and that was the reason why. I mean, we were short yesterday, and everybody knew before the game started that we wouldn't bowl 90 overs in a day.
Yeah. Good stuff, Tony. Well, brilliant. It's been fantastic to talk to you about the Test match. I think it's absolutely great. It's a fascinating game. So we'll bring Mac back in, but just to say as well, for folk that have been watching, thank you very much, and thanks for your questions, particularly Amrishar for your questions and for your contributions this evening. Follow us on Twitter at SFTV_cricket. That's as in Sports Fans TV. So at SFTV_cricket. Max just brought up an image of my kind of profile page there, or the profile page we use. A wonderful photograph of my own batting gloves and ball there, just for everyone's delectation. And I put links to all the Medium articles and the various other bits and pieces that we've done up there, and links to where you can find things. Here we go. Max put up the article on New Zealand in the World Test Championships, and there's the Australia one there as well. Lots of good stuff. What we try to do is look at some of the stats and the numbers that are underlie and kind of underpin teams' performances and some individual players' performances, to try to get to the real stories about what's going on. It's all quite interesting stuff. So plenty going on, and during the Test matches and things, I try to tweet as well and share my thoughts on the game as it's live too. But it's pretty exciting. So there you go, Mac. A good start to the Test summer, and a Test match which is intriguingly poised. Could go any way at the moment, but I think we're feeling England will probably be happy with the draw at this point, and New Zealand will be looking to win the game.
Yeah,
thank you, boys. Thank you so much, and it's been fascinating listening to you boys break things down, from the Ollie Robertson situation to how things have gone on against England and New Zealand, and it's plenty more excitement to come, plenty more games to go. How many more days are left? Just
three more days. 3 more days. Yeah,
3 more days.
There's a bit of rain forecast for tomorrow, which is always a challenge in England. But then I think Saturday and Sunday hopefully will be fine. So maybe a little bit of disruption tomorrow, which depending on the state of the game can sometimes help the batsmen and gets them out of the way of a difficult bowling attack, and sometimes helps the bowlers, because it means if you keep having breaks, you keep your bowlers fresher. They can put their feet up and get a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Indeed. So let's see how it all goes. So thank you so much for your analysis, boys. As always, pleasure. Let us know your thoughts as well. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you. Leave your comments if you're watching on the various social media, from Twitch, YouTube and Facebook. Then let us know your thoughts as well. And be sure to join us. We're here now through the summer. We're here through the summer. We've been here before the summer, but we're here through the summer now. It's cricket season now. Forget the Euros. Follow the cricket. And this is where it's at. This is where the action's happening. So to follow us, and we'll see how the matches go. And there's all the cricket that's going to go on through the summer. There's so much going on. Stuff that's been delayed, stuff that's going on. So follow as well, as Steve said, as you see below, follow us on Twitter. Follow Steve. He's there, SFTV_cricket. He was tweeting today about some of the game that was going on. And also just follow Steve as well, as you'll find out on this Twitter page about Medium, as we brought up earlier. So that'd be great as well. So thank you for watching. Thank you as always, boys. Thank you, Steve. Cricket guy, pleasure.
Cheers, Mac.
Cheers.
Cheers, and Tony. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
And thank you very much. And thank you for watching the Cricket Fan Show. And we'll see you next week, 8 p.m. Thursday,